This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad with daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner. It's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is VP, the host of No Nonsense Forex. It's one of the largest and most loved Forex trading channels on YouTube. He's an American guy who's been living in Mexico for a number of years now. And this episode we're going to talk a lot about finance and also I think an inspirational story for some of the older guys. VP is in his 40s now and made, the change into working online and living abroad a bit later in life. So I think this will be a good one for the older guys. So without further ado, VP, how's it going, man?
It's doing great. It's good to be here. I've been with you since the blog days. So it's been really nice to see you progress and get to this point too. And we finally meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that you have a pretty good sounding microphone. So I guess that's what we get when we have a famous YouTuber on the podcast.
Yeah, I got my podcast mic all queued up and good to go. So I'm glad it's working.
So following since the blog days, you probably know then there was the OG Vance who wrote, a lot of those early articles. And then I'm some new random guy that came in when we started the podcast about a year and a half ago. We also met in person, right? In Mexico City.
Yeah, I was part of that first meetup. We didn't get too much FaceTime, but we made it work towards the end. Yeah.
We can do it again.
Yeah.
So you're in Guadalajara right now.
I am. I've been here over a year now. Yeah, I'm basing out of here for now. I probably need to not be static and start and get moving around a little bit. Like you said, I'm in my 40s now. If I was in my 20s, I would just stay here for a while. But years kind of mean more, and there's still a lot I want to do and see. So thinking of heading down and doing the whole Paraguay thing and getting that Southern Cone exposure, and then maybe bouncing back and forth. I don't know. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm definitely going to stay kinetic for sure.
That's interesting. That almost seems counterintuitive that the young guys want to go ripping around the world and the old guys want to have a base.
Yeah, see, the thing with me though is the reason why I started so much later is just I was never in a position to do it. So ever since I can remember, I always wanted to have a life just like this, be able to, live in different cities around the world and be able to do it without the constraints of money or time. That's really tough to do for most people. And I just didn't find a way. I was in hospitality for 20 years, mostly waiting tables. A lot of that was in Las Vegas, and I bought a condo in 2007, like an idiot. So I was just always underwater and hamstrung by that financially. And you can make good money waiting tables in Vegas, but it's very inconsistent. So you might have a $2,500 week, but then the very next week, if there's nothing in town, you might not get a shift. So you can never, you're always like afraid to spend the money you make, which I guess is a good habit to develop over time because you're not blowing it in a city like that. But, I was just never got to the point to where I could do this the way I wanted to. Like if I only have 2 days to go see something in a limited budget, I would just assume not go, because that's not the way I want to do it. So I waited and waited and waited, and I finally got there in my early 40s and really no regrets. People ask, they're like, don't you wish you would have done this sooner? I'm like, oh, well, yeah, but it just wasn't possible. So it's irrelevant, but we're here now.
Yeah, we can definitely come back to that. Or, you know what, I'll mention it while it's on my mind, which is just that, it's just kind of the era that we're in right now where remote work and making money online really only popped off like a couple of years before 2020, arguably with, 4-hour work week back in 2010-ish, but really it started getting more common maybe around, 2017, 2018. And the fact is, the way the lottery is, if you just happen to have been born in the 1980s, this just wasn't an option back in the day. And so a lot of people got into this a little bit later. And now I see a lot of guys in, their mid to late 30s and into their 40s, and they're just now getting into it, and they're kind of coming to grips with wanting to do cool stuff or date a lot of girls or whatever, but they're also kind of, and they just got that enablement through making money online. But they're kind of also like, damn, like, I'm getting older. I gotta do the family thing and stuff too. So it's a bit of a balance.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that, really. Like one, we're guys. We don't have to do the family thing until we can, or we can put it off till much, much later in life if we want to. And then I don't know, like right now, I am in much better health than I was my entire 20s. I was a skinny, fat, lazy piece of shit most of my 20s. I was drinking all the time, and I didn't have hardly any money back then. I didn't have any time to do anything, and all those things have completely changed now. So it's almost like a rebirth in a way. So I feel great. I feel very young. I don't feel like I act like a middle-aged man in a lot of ways. And if you just don't succumb to that, you'll do pretty well out here. Yeah, I have no problems dating even younger girls in their 20s. Kind of my sweet spot's kind of that 25 to 32 range personally. But I have a friend who's older than me who dates college girls, and they love him. Like he has great relationships with these girls. So it's very possible. Don't ever think it's not. I was even thinking ahead of time, well, maybe I should lie about my age when I go down there. But I've never had to do that. I'm just completely upfront,
Own it.
and it doesn't really matter.
Good. Well, this definitely isn't going to be a dating episode. That's what we talk about when we actually meet up in person. Because we try to, I don't know, we try to keep things respectful. So we'll just give
Yep.
them that teaser that it is, it's a good vibe in Latin America. But I would love to crack a bit into more of, uh, what you do. So no nonsense Forex. As of this recording, 284,000 subscribers. Is this your main gig, or you got a couple things going on? Give me like the just a 60-second of like how you kind of got from Vegas to a massive YouTube channel and everything you got going on now.
Okay. So it'll probably take about 120 seconds here to get all that done.
That's fine. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, but the cool thing about Vegas, especially the industry, is everybody has a side hustle going on. Nobody just wants to be stagnant and settle down, which is great. I fed off of that because that's how I always was. I grew up in the Midwest, and at 23, 24, everybody was already getting married and having kids. And not only that, I was having people ask me, why have I not gotten married and started having kids? What's wrong with you? So I'm like, yeah, screw this. So I went to Vegas, and everybody there was there for the same reason too. So it was really energizing, but nobody wants to be in hospitality forever either. So one guy I worked with was big into penny stocks and claimed to be really good at it. So I was like, oh, that seems like it could be a way out. So he gave me a suggestion. The first one hit and did really well. So I caught the bug right away. And then every pick after that went to zero. So I lost all that money, but I still had the bug. And penny stocks dry up in the summertime. And summertime
Really?
2009,
I didn't know that.
2010 was coming. Did you say something?
Yes, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was seasonal.
Yeah, just for some. Well, he told me that, and I looked at the charts. And like, yeah, they do. So I needed something else, another hustle. So I went on some of these financial boards, and I clicked the Forex tab, and I was like, let me just find the smartest guy here, and then ask him how to learn this. So I was like, look, man, I'm not looking for advice. Just point me in a direction. Where's a good place to learn? So he pointed me in a direction, and I learned it. And I have a major case of ADD. So there's certain things I learn really well, and this was one of them. And there's certain things I don't, like foreign languages, which we'll get to. But I just absorbed this so quickly. I got so excited. I said, okay, this is going to be it. This is what I'm burn the boats. I'm going to make this happen no matter what. So, like anybody, I struggled really bad for a few years. And I noticed when it comes to reading charts, which is 95% of Forex trading,
Mhm.
everybody was using the same tools. There's tools out there you can use to determine which way price is more likely to go.
Mhm.
And everybody was using like the same 12 or 15. I'm like, is this all that's out there? And I went and looked, and there were thousands and thousands of different tools. I'm like, why for the last 50 years has everybody been using the same tools? So, I would study them, I would test them, I would find the best combinations to put them all together, and then I created a little algorithm that helped me out and made me a really good, maybe go from bad to decent, and then from decent to good. Got on with a prop firm in 2014. I'm still with them, and then, but still, Vance, it's just like restaurants. Trading, even when it's good, it's very inconsistent. You could have a
Mhm.
great month, and then you might take a negative the next month. So it's just, I never felt like I was in a good enough place to just up and leave, or I would have done this a long time ago. So I started the channel in 2018, just thinking, okay, maybe there's a few other people out there who wouldn't mind doing things this way, because it's tough to talk people into doing things a brand new way when they've been told one way their entire life.
Mhm.
But turns out there was a lot of people, and it really, really caught on. And through trading, through the $13 I get from YouTube nowadays, the, the affiliates and the sponsors and a couple other businesses I run, between all of those income streams that kind of fluctuate, I was finally able to get away from my the lease on my house and break free and come out into the to nomad world right at the year of 2020 when COVID came.
Mhm.
So all the places I really wanted to go, mainly in Europe, were pretty much off limits. And Argentina has always been kind of an end game for me too. They were totally shut down. So what was open? Mexico, Colombia, Panama, places like that. So that's just where I went. I had a decent background in Spanish, so I felt good enough to do that. And so I was just super nomadic for a while, like really in the back of my mind, looking for a place to base. But there's always, there's certain criteria I have, so I just bounce around. You know, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico. I don't think I'm leaving anything out, but I was kind of all around there.
Damn,
And then,
you hit up all that.
yeah, in a short amount of time, pretty much just
Wow.
living out of two suitcases and a computer bag. And I mean, it's living the dream for me. But you do want to settle down after a while. I did kind of want to have more than two pairs of shoes and and an actual address and things like that. So I never considered Guadalajara until heard people talking about it, and then I went there. I'm like, yep, this ticks every single box. And so been here for, like I said, a little over a year now. But even as much as I like it, I told you before, I can't get too comfortable. I got to move. I might rotate and come
Mhm.
do like 6 months here, 6 months down south. I don't know yet, but it's definitely been a great place to be.
Mm. And then, so when you came to the meetup in Mexico City back in February or March, whenever it was, were you just passing through?
No, I was renewing my residence permit.
Uh,
It just happened to be the exact same week you had that meetup. So I'm like, oh, cool. Let's go to that.
there you go. Nice. Yeah, I love Guadalajara. I definitely like it more than Mexico City, I would say. If you had to explain Guadalajara to someone who's never been, to our American audience, how would you describe it?
So very easy, actually. Mexico City is a lot like New York City, which is not for everybody. If you come from the Midwest, like I did, or most cities in the United States, I think you're going to find a much easier transition in Guadalajara. We actually have highways and large grocery stores and really big shopping malls that people actually go to. It's
Mm.
a lot of it is still very walkable. Some places aren't, but there's plenty of places that are. I just find it
Hmm.
to be very easy. um, Really good connectivity out of the airport, and they're
Hmm.
expanding it for the World Cup, so that's going to get even better. I just when I was traveling around, I just had certain criteria that if it wasn't there, it was going to be a deal breaker. So weather's a big one for me. I said, look, I don't want some place. I don't like places that are really hot, so that's going to eliminate a lot of Latin America right there. But I still want to have the sun out most of the time because I want to get the benefits from the sun.
Hmm.
So that's going to eliminate places like Mexico City, places like Bogota, and when you're in the Bahia, as you know, like that whole region, the weather is just so perfect because you get the sun, but you're at elevation. So you get rid
Hmm.
of a lot of the excessive heat, the bugs, things like that.
Humidity,
So
yeah.
that was a perfect bullseye. The connectivity is big. I don't want to live in the middle of nowhere and have to take an hour bus to get to this airport to that airport just to get to where I'm going, and then have to do the same thing on the way back. That doesn't appeal to me. So it has to be, the connectivity has to be good. It has to be walkable. So that would eliminate places like Medellin for me that I just didn't find to be very walkable. I know
Mhm.
there's places in the south that apparently are, but the places I was really interested in, like Poblado and Laureles, I just didn't get a real walkable vibe from those
Yeah, yeah. I
places.
guess Sabaneta and Vigado are a bit walkable, but yeah, it's a bit away from
I
things.
heard that I've been in Vigado. Yeah, I just never got a
Yeah.
chance to get down there. And then I do like to date, so it's got to be above average women, which is going to it's going to I hate to say it's going to eliminate places like Oaxaca and Guatemala City,
I'm cutting you
places
off
like.
before you get us in trouble.
Yeah, I won't go any further. But those are my criteria, and I said Guadalajara just checked all those boxes, and I'm much more of a cities guy. I'm not a nature guy or a beach guy, um, because of what I do. I think I don't want to sound boastful or anything, but I think a lot of people can relate to this. If you have your own business, you probably work a lot. I work a lot, but I'm working at my own pace. So I don't have a lot of stress. Most people who have 9 to 5s are like, oh man, I'm so stressful. I would just love to decompress and go lay on a beach somewhere. That's the last thing I want to do. That's the last thing I need. I need the opposite. I'm not fighting stress. I'm fighting boredom. So I need things to
Mm,
do. I need convenience. And what's cool about Guadalajara too is if you want nature, the whole state of Jalisco has a lot of great places you can go. If I want to go to a beach, I'm a $50 plane ride, an hour west to Puerto Vallarta. It's all there if you want it.
mhm.
But I kind of tend to feel that most nomads feel the same way because most of the ones I meet in the WhatsApp groups and the Telegram groups, they all live in big cities too. Most of them do.
Mhm. Yeah, I would take the bus to Mazatlan. I did that a bunch of times from Guadalajara. It's like 5, 6 hours, but it's a nice bus, so it goes by in a flash.
Yeah, that's a long time to be sitting down for me. I get so impatient with long plane rides, and then I meet these people from Australia, that took 16 hours to get here, and they're like, "You pussy." And I'm like, "I know, it's it's bad,"
Mhm.
but yeah,
It's
I guess your
interesting you
tolerance.
say that Guadalajara is keeps you busy and you don't feel bored there.
No, I mean it's not going to be as exciting as Mexico City, but it's a city of 5 million people. There's plenty to do. You never run out of things to discover and see and all that. And again, like I said, getting around is a lot easier too. So
Mhm.
you can take advantage of that. And if you want to go explore, go explore. And if you like where you are, you can just hang out there too.
Yeah, I remember I had it might not even be expired yet, but I had the Guadalajara City Bike Network. You know what I mean? Those bikes that you dock in the stations. I had that in Guadalajara and it was nothing. It was like $30 for a whole year pass or something. And I used that a bit. You know, you can't do the whole city on bikes, but they do have quite a bit of bike lanes and stuff. So I thought that was nice that they had that, and they'll probably like expand that bike network. You know.
They need to. Yeah, I don't see it a lot. I know what you're talking about. I do see it, but it's not super common yet.
I would use it to go from like, like kind of downtown Colonia Americana up to like Chapultepec and Andares. So I would literally bike to Andares from like downtown and stuff.
That's a that's a ways. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit, but I don't know. I like biking. Obviously, Uber's super cheap. I mean, people probably know that if they're listening to this podcast. So, and then
Yeah,
yeah,
that
it's
same
pretty
that
walkable.
same bike ride would be a $6 Uber about out here. Yeah.
I know, I know. That's good. So I'm glad you're having fun. You're not getting bored in Guadalajara. What's your favorite area? Do you prefer the kind of downtown Americana Chapultepec vibe, or do you prefer Zapopan or Andares or somewhere else?
Um, I like and I don't like Providencia Americana. They do have some really great bars out there. But I, a lot of people want to live out there. I'm like, you're going to have a hard time doing regular things out there. The infrastructure is not great. I mean, you're going to have great bars and restaurants on every corner, which is cool. But if you want to go to a grocery store, get dry cleaning done, that's going to be a hike more often than it's not. So I like being in neighborhoods that are fairly close to that. I do like Providencia. Most of my friends are out that way.
Hmm.
Um, not
Providencia.
the most exciting place, but really, really nice. It's Guadalajara is not very green, but you do get a lot of green up that way. So if I had to pick, it would probably be that. Most of Zapopan's pretty residential, so I would kind of maybe cross that off. Chapalita's really gringo, not really my thing. So I guess by process of elimination, if I had to, there were no furnished apartments at the time, or I would be living there right now. But Providencia, I think, is a really nice
Providence
place
is
to
the
be.
play.
Yeah, if
I
you could
didn't know
afford it.
Chapelita. Hopefully, I'm saying it right. Chapelita is very. I didn't know it was so gringo. I thought it was kind of like the local alternative to Avenida Chapultepec.
No, it's super gringo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've even had Uber drivers say, "Oh, you should live out there." I'm like, no, I don't want to be around gringos. That's not why I came here.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It is a good area that's like also walkable. Okay, cool. We can kind of keep moving. We don't want to make this like a whole Guadalajara episode. I had a couple random questions. You reached out to me way at the beginning of the year in January and said, I'm being interviewed on a crypto channel regarding living in Latin America on Wednesday. I was going to mention your Twitter handle. Did you end up mentioning it?
I did. Yeah. Um, Now he doesn't have a very big channel, so I'm not sure how much exposure you actually got from it. But we talked a lot about coming down to Mexico, and he was super into it at the time. So I was just feeding off that and telling him all the cool things and residence permits and how easy it was and things like that. And he ended up not going, but that's what that was about. And I just want to give permission or get permission from you to give you a bit of exposure out there.
No, for sure. I definitely appreciate that. So that was like one of the first times we kind of got in contact. And then just a couple of days ago, you said your tweet today in your last episode inspired me to let you know, like, let's, collaborate more. What was that tweet and what was that episode that inspired you?
Just something you had mentioned in the last episode about how you were looking for people to come on and be a guest. Um, in the back of my mind, I'm like, this guy's probably got a ton of really exciting guests. I don't think I'm that exciting. Some of these people are like storybook characters. They're just so interesting to listen to. Um, but then you also mentioned on a tweet, I think you were talking about the recession coming up. I don't remember the exact words, but I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, yeah, this guy kind of understands where the puck's going, and I have a whole podcast based on stuff just like that. So it's seemed like a pretty good match, and so I felt like I'd reach out to you.
Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. Bitrefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries, including the USA, Canada, all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. Yeah, so the tweet was something like the recession is coming, stack cash, multiple income streams, keep costs low. That was the one?
Yes, and I agree with all those things wholeheartedly. Yeah, people are
Elaborate on that.
so. What's cool about nomads is they understand the whole diversification thing to where most people don't. Most people stay in one place and have one bank, and that's all they do. You know, Nomads understand that geo arbitrage is real. Um, Having other places you can go, especially after what we saw in 2020, is a really good idea. Having other banks is a really good idea after what we've seen this past year. I think this is just the smoke before the fire in a lot of ways. But yeah, but when you said stacking cash, some nomads are, you know, either gold bugs or they're Bitcoin maxis, and those people are typically very against the dollar. Um, and I have a really big problem with that because I'm kind of, I take a more zoomed out view. I have to see the entire field because I have
Mhm.
people on my podcast who, you know, are hanging on what I say in terms of investment advice. So I can't join these little cults to where a lot of people are like, they don't do any research on the other side. They don't research the dollar and why it might actually be a really good investment. They're just like, ooh, that sounds good. I'm just going to believe this for the rest of my life. It's lazy. The dollar is probably has another good 20 years in the tank minimum. It is the place that it
I
is the
like
place
that.
that everybody flocks to in a crisis. Go look at your history. It's that's where they go. They're not going to pile into something like Bitcoin. And I love Bitcoin, but it's got an 80 vol. It can drop 75% in a year. That's not a safe haven. I don't care how you want to draw it up.
Hmm.
It is, and it has always been the United States dollar, and to a lesser degree gold. And
Hmm.
so that's what you need to have. I think gold's really great when you're playing defense, because gold is the ultimate defense, because it doesn't really do much. And so when everything else is burning to the ground, if you can just stay afloat, then once it's all over, you can come out really well the other side. I'm super bullish on the dollar. I think that's a good idea, but I could be wrong too. So I have a little basket of currencies I keep off to the side just in case. So it's never think you're 100% right in any of this stuff, because the most unexpected thing can happen. If we haven't learned that by now or this decade, it's black swans are almost the norm. So spread yourself out, diversify, have a little bit of everything, and expect some of those things to crash. But if as long as you're not losing everything, that's the really important part.
Cool. Yeah, I'm tempted to ask you about the economy, but a million people can do that. I was kind of curious. You said some of the previous podcast guests seemed like superheroes or characters. What were some of the notable ones that you might have listened to or enjoyed?
Maybe I don't know the names, but just people who are just out there killing it. Yeah, usually the ones that have their own businesses that are doing really well. Um, whether they're still in the drop shipping game, or like you had Wealthy Expat on the other day. That
Yep.
was a really cool one.
Did you learn
That
anything new that you didn't know from his YouTube channel?
Yeah, you're asking me particulars. That's tough.
Okay, I don't mean to grill you.
I
I thought it was crazy that he's like 25.
don't know. That part was nuts. Yeah, and how he was high on certain countries, lower on other countries that might be a little more mainstream in the nomad space. I thought that was really interesting. Really high on Serbia. I don't hear a lot of people talk about that. I know it's getting a little more popular, but he kind of broke down why, and I thought that was interesting. Um, yeah, things like that, and just a lot of the bro talk that goes on the podcast from people who have just gone and done all these things that I still want to go do, is really inspired to me. The Nick O'Brien podcast in particular, I was
Nick
following
loves
on Twitter for
Spain.
a while, but yeah, Spain is officially in the mix now, and that podcast had a lot to do with it.
Really cool. And I noticed that you have started collecting residencies a little bit. Are you willing to divulge which ones you have or which ones you have your eye on?
Yeah, so I got temporary in Mexico, working towards a permanent, working towards a passport there. I'm about 2 years in.
Nice.
Uh, got permanent residency in Panama, which is awesome. So many things you can do with that.
Nice. Like
Um,
what?
so this is kind of something else I want to talk about with people. I see a lot of people on the forums trying to find cheaper ways to do things, and I would almost implore people to just not do that, because this is something you're going to have for a long time, and the benefits outweigh any $500 here, $1,000 there you're going to shave off in the present time. Just get the full service and just get it done and have it, because with Panama, for example, this is back when they had the friendly nations visa.
Hmm.
That's another thing. These things do nothing but get more expensive or get more restrictive along the way. They never seem to go down. This. They always seem to get worse and worse. So
Hmm.
you need to jump on these things quick. I'm doing that with Paraguay now, but with Panama, it was about 15 grand all in. And that's, I'm not a multimillionaire. That's a lot of money to just part with for a piece of plastic. So I was going back and forth on. I was seeing other people that said, no, I can do. We can do this for much cheaper. I know a guy over here. I just bucked up and got the full service, and I got a great lawyer that took care of everything. I had a fixer and a translator go with me to set up a really great bank account, to go get the cedula, and they formed they formed an S corp for me that I now run a lot of those income streams through, that hooks up to the bank. I have that lawyer. I had that lawyer on retainer for a year. It was all baked into the price, so I could ask her to do anything I needed. And the punchline is the year later, when I filed for taxes, I saved more than $15,000 in taxes just in 1 year by doing things when I did and the way I did it. So it's like there was really nothing to be scared of. The benefits outweigh the costs for most people. So if you're considering doing this and you're sitting in America or Canada or the UK and you're hemming and hawing about it, like just get up and go do it. Pay the money. You have a job in a Western country. The money's going to come back around. Just get up and do it. It's totally, totally worth it.
I agree. Don't be a bish.
Yeah. No, no,
um,
no tire kickers, no window shoppers. We don't want you down here anyway.
yeah. Panama. So is it kind of just like a back pocket residency, or do you see a way that it fits into your plan in terms of like with the Forex or sending money to Panama or fitting into the your structure?
Somewhere in the middle. It's too hot for me to live in, unfortunately. Because I'm one of those people. Like, not a lot of people love Panama. I love Panama. Panama is such a vibe.
Good. I like Panama too.
Yeah, dude, it's like it's its own little like almost micronation. It's so unique with all the 80s corporate buildings and the having it be a banking center and stuff like that. You almost feel like you're in in like 1980s New York City, but it's but the Panama City's only got like 1 million people, so you almost feel like you're running things after about 5 or 6 months. That's how I felt. And I think you had somebody on your podcast, or maybe Jake said it. I don't know, but like if you get in with the right people there, like you're
Hmm.
hanging out with people that have real political connections. To where
Hmm.
like if you keep this going for a couple years, you might actually have influence in a pretty significant country. Like that's wild. Like you would never get that in Mexico. You'll never ever get that in the United States. But there's a chance you can really kind of take that ownership in a place like Panama. And but again, I like to walk, and walking in Panama is a nightmare because of the weather. So
Yeah.
that and the fact that it's almost a lateral move in cost from the United States when it comes to rent and food and things like that. Ubers are cheap. Services like dry cleaning and medical care are cheaper, but everything else is pretty much on par with the states. And so I'm like, I'm gonna try something else. But apart from that, dude, thought Panama was great. I love having ties there, and like I said, I have a bank there, I have a business there, and it's going to be that way for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Like, do you have activity, even if you're not there? Like, are you using it for having activity there, or are you literally just got the PR visit every 2 years, see what happens in the future?
No, I mean I run most of my income streams through that S corp now,
Oh
which
wow.
runs to the bank,
Oh
and
wow.
it's been a great tax strategy. It's
Wow. Even the YouTube stuff or the just like the trading stuff?
No, YouTube and trading stuff has to be through the United States company. There's certain things that are just really a hassle
Makes
to
sense.
unplug that and put it somewhere else. Yeah, it's because you got to remember this isn't something that a lot of people do. So even the income streams I did unplug from the U.S. and plug in over here took a while. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of I had to sign a form for one that said, "No, I am not laundering money. This is completely above board," because the government agency I was dealing with just didn't understand that. So
Mm.
it's a bit of work up front, but like I said, the benefits are already paying off really, really nice. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that's going to look like in the future.
Mm. And so you find that once you kind of got over the hump in Panama, everything's pretty chill in terms of like they're not shutting down your accounts when they see weird transfers, stuff like that.
No, and well, there was a little bit of an issue early on. Now the bank, I have a Panamanian bank, but that's not the one I use. They had to send me over to a bank in the Bahamas because Panama is still on the gray list as far as banking goes. So they have to
Hmm.
do things a certain way, and anything that says forex or crypto in it is something they normally don't want to deal with. Now there are a couple banks out there that have kind of come out of nowhere and said, okay, we're gonna take you guys, but there's still a lot of red tape you got to go through for them too. So my lawyer just thought it was easier to get a bank somewhere else. So even though things run through the Panama company, they're connected to a different bank offshore. Yeah, again, it's not going to be turnkey. It's not going to be snap your fingers and everything's ready to go. You're going to have to put some work in up front, but I really do think it's worth it at the end of the day. It has been so far.
Okay, cool. That's good. So it wasn't just like I think a lot of people want to do offshore stuff when they don't even need it, but it sounds like you found a real use case?
Yeah, so for me, I don't have a paid product. I'm not setting up a business in that country and paying employees or anything like that. So, kind of using it as more of I don't know if pass through is the right word, but there are setups for people who just do everything, who have their own business and do everything remotely. And I would wager to say most of the nomads out there have some kind of setup already. But if you don't, and you're doing everything in a Western country, just know that with a little bit of boots on the ground work and some money up front, it can get a lot better. And again, like we said before, dude, it's like who knows how much longer it's going to be that way. But once you're kind of grandfathered into it, you're going to be fine. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying to put in all this work up front, so I don't have to do it anymore. I want Paraguay to be my last residency permit, and then just
Hmm.
kind of hit cruise control after that.
And you did Palau too.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Because why not? Right. I even mentioned it on my podcast, and I mentioned your episode, and I think I even linked it because
Hell yeah.
there's not like a whole lot you can do with it yet. Like I had a bunch of people go and get it, and then they would email me like, "Okay, I got it. Now what?" And I'm like, "I don't know," but it's one of those things to where they're kind of building everything around it later. So you're seeing little things with their stable coin, with their address service slowly start coming around. So I think it's cool to get it now and then just kind of take a sit back and wait approach and see what kind of options open up. You just don't know. They're not going to be relevant for everybody, but at the very minimum, I have that as an extremely cheap back pocket residency. So I didn't see a need. I didn't see a reason to pass on it.
Did you do the longest one? I forget if it's 5 or 10 year.
No, I did the 1 year. I think at the time that was the only one available. I didn't
Uh,
see anything for a longer time period, and so I threw them some money on the blockchain, and they sent it to me 2 weeks later. It was super easy. It took like 20 minutes.
Dope. And do you are you like involved in the Palau like Telegram groups at all, and kind of like helping them with the thing, or are you just kind of sitting back and seeing what happens?
I didn't even know that existed. Yeah, so if you want to send that to me, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, yeah, they have some groups. I can send them to you. And they have people that are kind of like helping build it, like crypto aficionados and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was taking a drink of water there. I think that's good. They're very open. They want, they understand the opportunity. There's really no one central place that's super easy for everybody. There's places, but again, it's a lot of work. They might not accept everything you do. So if you can be that place that does all of those things, then it's a huge benefit. Like it's kind of like what Bukele is doing in El Salvador. It's like, why aren't more people doing this? It just makes too much sense, right?
Hmm. Hmm. And so you mentioned you have a podcast. It's like it's about financial prepping.
Yeah, I got two podcasts now. I have one trading psychology podcast with the head of my prop firm. We do it together. And for any traders out there, you could have the most holy grail system known to man, but you're gonna screw it up because that's what we do. We're emotional beings, especially as men, especially when it comes to trading, because we're so focused on status and success and stuff like that. So that's really the number one thing that takes traders down. It's not technical analysis, it's not fundamentals, it's psychology. So, and nobody's really focusing on it. So I wrote a book on it years ago, and now I have a podcast that just focuses on that. It's the only one of its kind, so check that out. And then the other one is what you said. Yeah, it's called the 10-Minute Contrarian. Um, I kind of realized with the Forex channel that because it's all evergreen content, and it's almost like a college course for free online. But the problem with evergreen content is once you've told people what to do, you've already told them what to do. There's nothing left to say. So I pivoted because I knew the way I invested was also a bit different from what most people do too. So that audience is a lot smaller, but it's a great audience. And they're very dedicated, really tuned in. They always give me great ideas. And that's going to be on things, just things that I think are more common to nomads, but not places that most people are looking. So, we do a lot with precious metals and energy stocks and crypto and currencies and diversification. The stuff that's all pretty common knowledge to most nomads. I think they like it, but that's what it's all about, and that's been going on for more than 2 years now. So yeah, we're going
You got more
strong.
episodes than me. You got 116 or something.
Yeah, is that more than you?
Yeah, we got. 102 are out. Got 10 more on the docket.
Well, mine are anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, so they're easier to do. So there you go.
Okay, not an hour and a half.
Yeah. No, I don't have that
No,
kind of stamina.
no, that's cool. I always really was fascinated by contrarian investing. I just remember Ron Paul came out, and then that kind of got me into like gold and the Fed and Ludwig von Mises and the Austrian school and stuff. And then you start looking at Hey everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America, and Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. And it's we were kind of right, you and I, because 10 years ago the alternative assets was less than 5% of institutional investors portfolio, right? They were probably like 70-30 stocks, bonds, something like that, maybe a bit of currencies, and alternatives was like almost nothing. And they would do like a bit of PE, bit of VC, bit of real estate. And I think alts have just exploded to grab a significantly larger share of institutional capital.
I think you're right that they have gotten a lot bigger, but I still don't think they make up a very big percentage. I know gold, for example, is still under 1%. I think Bitcoin's under 1%. I think people do understand, and because really there's no need to do this. Things have been so good in the world for so long. Most people can't even remember a time where it wasn't.
Right. Well,
2008 global
that
financial.
stuff's like the ones you mentioned are like defensive contrarian, but then there's contrarian that's still, um, income producing, be it real estate and or energy or something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of the point I was getting to. Now, real estate I don't touch because I'm just not good at it. But things have been so good. If you just stayed in regular equities, you would have been fine. Most people don't even remember the global financial crisis, nor were they really affected by it. Yet the dot-com crisis before that, almost nobody's affected by that. They have not known a world where things are just not great. And when things become not great, that's when you get that rotation into commodities and energy, because those things get a lot more scarce, a lot more expensive. Because with the end of globalization now, we can't just get everything we want from other countries. Usually if a country's got it, they're probably going to nationalize it. They're probably going to turn inward, go more towards mercantilism, and that's going to cause countries to get really desperate, and so you're going to see some crazy things happen. You're going to see more wars, you're going to see more government upheavals, and so these resources are going to get more and more scarce as a result.
Mm.
So I think what, like to your point, is the smart money has realized that, and they have started to play defense that way. um, you got to understand, with contrarian investing, you're always going to be too early, so you just got to be okay with that. Put
Hmm.
money away you don't care about, and just kind of sit back and wait.
Jim Rogers was always my favorite dude. Do you like Jim Rogers?
Oh, I love Jim Rogers with his super thick Southern accent, and just likes to grab his little silver coin and wave it in the air. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. Be like, this gold coin is from North Korea.
That's right. I'm in Singapore right now.
No, because I think what I liked about Jim Rogers was he was traditionally successful, but then he also lived an interesting life, right? He made his money on Wall Street, cashed out at like 37, I think, and then set numerous world records traveling around the world, first on a motorcycle as investment biker, and then in a car, in a Mercedes, a yellow Mercedes, driving. It was like the longest driven trip like ever. And I just always I explained that terribly, but I just always thought that was so cool that he was like traditionally successful, which is important to a lot of us, and keeping our parents happy. But then he also went and lived an interesting life, and he found a way to sort of merge the two, which is what I think all digital nomads are trying to do. We're trying to merge being traditionally successful and, we're making money online and we're trying to buy international real estate and do all these things. But we're also just generally trying to live an interesting life and visit the waterfalls and do cool stuff that normal people back in New York don't get to experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim Rogers is an inspiration to everybody. Like, if you could start over and do things exactly the way he did them, like, wouldn't you? Like, doesn't that sound amazing to everybody in this space?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds totally sick. I guess it just depends on who you are. Growing up, as a kid, when I was bored, I look at the back of my social studies books and just look at all the maps and like point to Oman and just be like, "Ooh, I wonder what that's like. I want to see that." So that was always my dream. And so when I heard about Jim Rogers, I'm like, God damn, I'll never be able to do what he did, but it's just such an inspiration, and so cool to follow somebody like that who is so laid back about everything too. Like, he's seen it all, so he pretty much knows what's going to happen, and he's not afraid to tell you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess for the listeners who maybe not be aren't so familiar with Jim Rogers, I think one of the other things that was cool about him was he didn't just cash out and then stop investing, or whatever. Is he went to the places to coming back to the contrarian investing thing to find contrarian opportunities. I think some of the examples were he was driving around Africa and he drove over the border into Botswana and he noticed that all the roads were perfect, the infrastructure was excellent. Things were working. People were, laborious. And so he just rocked up to the stock market in Botswana, walked up to the little office they had there somewhere and said, "Hey, I want to buy every stock on the stock market." And there was maybe 8 stocks.
Yeah, that level of boots on the ground, just you couldn't get that back then. You actually had to put boots on the ground, and who had the resources to do that? The only other people who had that kind of advanced information were commodities traders. There's a really good book called The World for Sale, and it talks about, if nobody wants to sell oil to Iran, for example, Iran still gets oil, from other countries. How do they get it? Well, it's these commodity traders that just they
Mm-hmm.
travel all over the world, and by doing this, they get to see, okay, who has a lot of this, who has a little bit of that. And back before the internet, they were the only ones who were able to see these things ahead of time, and so that's a
Mm-hmm.
tremendous advantage. So again, I love what Jim did, and he really leveraged that freedom, to where most people would have just been fat and happy and got a big house somewhere and just bunkered in there. Jim didn't do that, and so that's another reason why I'm a big fan of his.
Do you know who Mark Rich is?
Yeah, he was in that book.
He was in the book.
Yeah, he was one of the early guys. He's dead now, I think. But yeah, I think I can't remember the company he was with, but it turned out to be, I think, Glencore
Yeah,
now.
it turned into Glencore
Yeah.
or
So
Evercore, something like that.
he was a big player, very controversial, but yeah, like I said, those guys always had the upper hand because they got to see everything first.
Mm-hmm. If I had to summarize Mark Rich, very interesting story, guys. If you enjoy anything about My Latin Life, check out Mark Rich as well. I think there was a book specifically about his life. It's been a while since I read it, maybe like 5 years, but he was a American European Jewish guy. He got into commodity trading. They sent him down to Bolivia of all places. He spent multiple years in Bolivia, learned Spanish, got Bolivian citizenship, and and then he had like 3 4 citizenships there, and then he went somewhere else. I think I kind of forget. And what he was one of the biggest commodity traders in the world, and he was literally moving the commodity markets, and all these sanctioned countries. Iran couldn't sell to Israel, couldn't sell to whoever. He was like the middleman who was sort of disguising who the buyer and seller were, such that they were kind of surpassing the sanctions in that way. And he built one of the biggest commodity trading companies in the world that turned into Glencore, which is still basically like the biggest commodity trading company in the world, one of the most powerful companies in the world, like billions in turnover. And kind of forget what the circumstances were, but he got sued by the United States and then left the United States and gave up US citizenship, I think, and then started living in Spain.
Yep.
And oh, he got pardoned, and it was a very controversial pardon by Bill Clinton. And they think that Marc Rich basically like paid a bunch of money to get pardoned because he got pardoned on the last day in office of Bill Clinton's presidency. And it was like this whole thing. It's a super interesting story.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the book right now on my the one I was talking about on my phone. It's called The World for Sale by Javier Bloss and Jack Farchi. I think I'm reading that right. And yeah, it goes over all those guys. And I don't even think Marc Rich was the most interesting character in that book. So if you like stuff like that, for $9, you could probably pick that up right now on Kindle.
There you go. Any other Rex or uh, big inspirations? People that if they speak, you listen, or people that had a big inspiration on your path?
Early on, maybe I think I took the same path a lot of people did. I was this kind of dopey Midwestern kid that just thought, you settle down, you get married early, and you start living for somebody else right away. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, oh, it does not have to be this way. And then of course everybody follows that up with 4 Hour Work Week, and then you get that inspiration, and then you completely start seeing the world the other in so many different ways, and you're like, I can't relate to most people anymore. So that's going to be tough. You're always going to be the oddball in your group of friends for the most part, and especially in terms of things you want in life. But if you haven't gone that route, even though those books are a little bit outdated, that's got to be a place to start. Um, he's kind of cheesy, but I was a big Gary Vaynerchuk guy. He kind of got me set on the right
Hmm.
path. Him and Seth Godin,
Hmm.
and I
I
can't
like
really
Seth.
say, yeah, Seth is awesome, still is. And but I can't, I've always done things so differently and thought so differently. I never really thought there was anybody out there like me to where I can say, yeah, that guy's my role model right there, or I got to listen to every single thing this guy says. But in terms of pointing me in the direction I needed to be pointed in, I would say, even though it's kind of guys people already know, if you don't know them, if you don't follow them, then that's a really good place to start.
Good tips. Coming back to the residencies, you mentioned that you're looking to do Paraguay soon. What do you think Paraguay would do in terms of complementing your portfolio and your life? Because you got U.S., Mexico, Panama, Palau. Where does Paraguay fit into that?
So I do want to have that southern hemisphere exposure, and just even as a bug out place, if we do go to nuclear war, I know that's not a good probability, but you do want to be as far away from all that as possible. I wouldn't want to be in Mexico; that's too close. Panama's got the canal. What's that going to be like? Let's just find a place we can go and chill. But from a weather standpoint, too, there's no cities that are just great 12 months out of the year. Guadalajara right now doesn't have a lot of sunshine. We're in rainy season. So
Mm.
for maybe like May through September, I wouldn't mind just geographically being in that area to where it's a lot nicer. And I can get some sun. Be really close to Argentina and Brazil, and just be able to do all of that because I haven't done it yet. So I think a really cool place to base out of. Then I can return back to Mexico if I want. I can kind of detour over to Spain. That's kind of where my head's at. But these things don't exist without Paraguay. And while it is still cheap and easy to get, remember they almost got rid of the permanent one altogether, or made it
Hmm.
really expensive.
Hmm.
Um, but I think now's the time you really got to jump on it. Even though I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it, you don't need to know. Just get it and have it. And sometimes the answers just come around on their own.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. I'm going down in a couple weeks if you want to come. I'll probably be down there when this episode comes out.
I heard, yeah. So I'm going down in December because I still have to get fingerprints and apostilles, and that's going to take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to get done, especially because I'm doing it remotely. So I wanted to go down in late September. That was the plan. But then once I found out how long this was going to be, I had to reschedule. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be down there with the great weather. I'm going to be down there when it's hot, but that's okay. I really want to get this done, and I'm going to parlay that with some Argentina. Trips in between, while I'm there. So looking forward to it. Wish it was sooner, but it's got to be later.
Yeah, that was always your dream, go to Argentina.
It was, yeah. Honestly, dude, those countries are so crazy and socialist at the time. I really thought that they weren't going to open like at all for like years and years and years. So I'm grateful they did. And if wave two is coming, I doubt it is, but if it is, I better get down there now for sure.
And coming back to the financial stuff, you mentioned that what you teach has a specific application for nomads, or that nomads are going to understand your content better. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, because going back to what I said before, how people have had it so good for so long, if you tell your average normie that they need to get a foreign residence permit or a foreign passport, and they also need to spread their money out between four different banks, and two of them need to be offshore, and you need to have gold, you need to have crypto, you're going to sound like a lunatic. It doesn't make any sense to them. You still might sound like a little bit of a lunatic to your typical nomad, but at least they're going to understand most of that, or at least understand the ethos behind it. So I think that's a really good audience to talk to, and they're already just on the surface a lot more like us. Everybody was in a situation they didn't like, and instead of complaining about it and inventing reasons not to make a move because they were scared, they just up and did it. And those are the type of people I like. Those are the type of people who also won't be afraid to make moves in the crypto investing world, and to buy uranium stocks and things like that. So it's a great built-in audience, I think, because just the way we already approach life and finance and safety is already baked in. So it's such an easier group to get your point across to. There's no
Mm.
hurdles.
Action takers.
Yeah, yeah. God bless them.
And you mentioned that your Spanish isn't that great. I think a lot of people, especially the older crowd, they're concerned about, I'm never going to learn Spanish. I'm too old. And maybe there's no point to Latin America if I don't learn the language.
Yeah, wrong. There's retirees that don't speak Spanish at all, and they even brag about it, and they get by just fine. Um, I'm probably halfway there with my Spanish. I speak it okay. My problem is when it's spoken back to me, I'm very slow to process it, and so I just kind of have this deer in the headlights look when they do that. When they do that, because Latinos speak really fast. On top of that, so some people don't have issues with that, but I do. So, and with me, as much as I work, it's really just a matter of me buckling down and taking a good 3 or 4 months to get better. I just don't have that time right now. Hopefully, my schedule is going to clear up a little bit next year. So I'm very interested in doing it, but I've really not experienced any major barriers. The only thing I really can't do is making friends with locals is a bit tough because you can't just sit at a table while everybody's talking and really absorb what they're saying. So that's difficult. Um, if you're going to go out and try to hit on girls, sometimes that can be tough because of the noise. And you're not going to understand what they're saying back to you. That can be a little tough, but I have creative ways around that. um, I'll actually give one out if you guys want a little bit of alpha here.
Sure, hit me.
Yeah, one of the things I do is so most of my friends are it's so funny. All my friends in Guadalajara are like these really smooth black guys. Like there's like 5 black guys in all of Guadalajara. They just happen to be my friends, and but they're amazing with women, right? But sometimes if they're busy doing something, I'll go and I'll kind of scan the room and say, oh, those girls look interesting. They don't have any guys around them. Let's go talk to them, because that's what I did in Vegas. I didn't need dating apps in Vegas because the industry, we kind of, even though it's 2 million people in Vegas and there's a lot of people in the industry, we kind of all hang out together. It's very incestuous. And so you just kind of talk to them and you date those girls because they also work at night like you do, which is really convenient. So I've never really used dating apps, and I still don't feel like I need them because I'm uncomfortable talking to girls. But the language barrier is a bit of a thing. So, so what I do is I'll go to Google Translate. Let's say I'm at a salsa bar and I see a couple girls I want to go talk to. I'll go to Google Translate and I'll type this in. I'll say, hello, my friends and I don't know how to salsa dance and we need your help. We are also very, very handsome. And then I'll type translate. And then I'll walk that up to a girl. I'll show it to them and I'll tap on the screen and they'll read it. And it doesn't always work, but I swear, like, I've never once showed that to a girl, had her read it, and she didn't start laughing. So it's an immediate icebreaker. And she also knows, look, my Spanish isn't that great. So if you know any English at all, now's the time to hook it up. And that's usually a really good way to kind of break that ice and get over that barrier of maybe not having the best Spanish. Sometimes you just got to get a little creative.
Hmm.
I will say from dating though, and this has been brought up. I don't know if it's you or Jake or Bowtied Passport, but if you're in a city, you're mostly going to be around middle class and upper class women, and a lot of them do speak English, or at least enough. So, you really don't have to. I mean, you're going to miss out on a few girls, but I have an abundance mindset. It's like, there's 5 million people in this town. You're not going to get them all. So, it's not as difficult as people think. If my ugly ass can go out there and have dates lined up, every so often, then anybody can. You just have to get over those limiting beliefs, and you have to be aggressive, because I've talked about this with women all the time when I date them. We like to talk about dating locals compared to dating gringos and kind of the differences and stuff like that. And they're usually very disappointed by the Americans and Canadians that come down, because you have to understand how they grew up. Uh, you know, they grew up with American TV and movies. So Americans were always, we were cowboys, we were billionaires, we were superheroes, and and then you see some of the gringos that come down here, and they're just not getting those same vibes, I
Mm.
guess.
Heard the term
So,
LBH?
uh,
It's
I don't know what.
it's loser back home.
Yeah, yeah. I hate to say that, because you can reinvent yourself out here, but you can't be doing the same stuff you were doing back home. Don't be afraid to know exactly what you want, and be dominant, and be upfront, and set standards. I I don't text girls during the daytime because I'm working, which is weird. They usually have guys texting them all day, but my time is actually worth something, and so that kind of they understand that. And then when they're with me, they are going to speak English, because I'm not going to understand you that well otherwise. So right there, you're kind of setting a frame to where you're like, look, I'm not your typical gringo that's going to bend over and just capitulate to everything you want. That's, I'm not like that. I'm a little closer, maybe a little bit closer to the guy you were kind of hoping would come out of North America and come down. So
Mm.
just things like that, I think, go a long way, because there's always those complaints about flaking and all these little weird idiosyncrasies they have. I think if you just do a little bit of work up front and show that you're not like everybody else, you can. I've always had really good relationships out here. I've had
Hmm.
very few of these things that people complain about, and I think it's just because I do those things up front. I think that's the move.
Hmm. Hmm. By the way, I'm meeting up with Bowtied Passports, and I've been hanging out with him a bit this week.
Yeah, he's got a great Substack, by the way. If you guys aren't on it, it doesn't cost much, and he's very prolific, and he answers a lot of the questions that people have, but I don't think we really think to ask. So yeah, big thumbs up. I subscribe to his Substack and Jake's Substack both. I think between those two, you're pretty covered.
Yeah, I guess I need my own friggin' Substack. I've been debating it for a while. Um, anyway, do you in Guadalajara? Do you think that the English level is actually quite high?
Seems to be, yeah, because when you move to these cities, you're not going to move to the poor areas. You're going to move to the nice areas because you can, um, and you can have a good life. So most of the people speak some, and even if they don't, Latinos are really nice everywhere. They'll meet you in the middle. Whether they have to pantomime or write it out or use Google Translate. So like I said, there's almost nothing I really can't do out here that doesn't have some kind of workaround.
Speak to me about that idea. I had a tweet today that did pretty well, talking about how nice and courteous Latinos are in terms of saying, have a nice day, good afternoon, that type of thing. Have you noticed that in your experience? Maybe Latinos are a little bit nicer than Americans, or at least in certain ways.
It's a cultural thing, but absolutely. Yeah. Every time um, somebody comes onto an elevator, they'll greet you. They'll say good morning or good afternoon. And every time they leave, they'll say con permiso or hasta luego, or, something. You always say something. You don't just stay quiet coming in and out of an elevator, for example. And it's the same when you text somebody. They almost always start by saying, good morning, good afternoon, how are you? Some kind of greeting, to where, in America, we just get right to the point. And that doesn't mean we're rude. That's how we do things. But yeah, you will definitely notice that, at least everywhere I've gone in Latin America, that has been the case. Even Mexico City, where they say people are rude, I have not experienced that. I found the capitalistas to be very, very courteous, just like everybody else.
Good. Well, that's reassuring, and I definitely echo those sentiments. Um, yeah, I think someone commented that like in the USA, if there's like a group of people or something, someone will just beeline to their friends and only talk to their friend and then like ignore everybody. Right? Like you go into like a group of people talking and you'll just like ignore the group and then talk to your friend. But like in Latin America, you really have to kind of address the group and just sort of like use like a basic level of politeness, I think is lacking.
Yeah, and as a result, your group expands, beyond just the little group you have. It's so much better that way. It's a lot of times, because we don't look like the typical groups that go out in Guadalajara. We get some looks when we walk in, but we almost make it a point to try and make friends with the people in the bar and just kind of hang out and drink and talk and tell stories with them, because it can be hard to do in an American bar, because people already have their routines. They have the people they like to talk to. They're a little bit warier of strangers.
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amounts so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. I went to a comedy show last night. It was like a gringo comedy show in Mexico City, and this guy got up. I thought it was pretty funny. I won't be able to say this perfectly, but he said he said gringos walking into a bar in Mexico is like a bachelorette party walking into a bar in America. Let's make it all about us.
We do have that je ne sais quoi to us. I know. And we are there to have a good time. We've usually had a few drinks before we even come in, so I'm sure we give off that vibe. And so it goes back to what I just said. You can either use that for positive or for negative, And then I think just opening your mouth and making friends and seeing what happens usually works more than it doesn't. So that's what I recommend you do, because you are going to get that stereotype walking in most of the time. So do good things with it.
VP, you seem like such a smart, normal guy to me, and I'm just kind of curious. Like you almost seem more smart and normal than most gringos I do see in Latin America.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
What advice would you have to people pursuing this path and doing things differently like yourself?
You have to make moves. There's always going to be reasons not to, and really, like I said, things have been so good for so long. If you just stayed in one place and did nothing, you were still fine. But when things turn, you're going to really wish you did things differently. And not just from a financial and freedom standpoint, but just because you never know what's going to get shut down. Like you might not be able to go to these places you wanted to go to, and you're just going to grow older and older with more and more regret. Things are still very cheap and available right now, so just come and see. You've probably heard all these positive or negative things about Latin America. Some of them are going to be true. Some of them are absolutely not going to be true, especially the safety stuff. It's mostly pretty safe. I come from a really dangerous city. I always have my defenses up, but there's only been one time in all of Latin America where like I really kind of got those defenses up, said, okay, I'm not in a good place. I need to get out of here. And that was in Medellin, actually. Parque.
Yes.
Yes. I was reading blogs from 2018 and 2019 talking about how great it was. I didn't know in 2020 they turned it into an open air brothel. And I walked in completely unknowing, and I was like, oh, something really, really feels off. I need to get out of here. And every turn I made, there were just more Propagos lined up. It's like it's like a maze I couldn't get out of.
They
So, but
recently bulldozed the park just this year, and I think they're trying to clean it up.
it should have never gotten there in the first place. It was so nice. You had all these really like great restaurants and cool bars that just went to waste because of that. But my point is, apart from that, I've been in so many places that people say just don't go, and I have felt extremely safe. Like I'll even walk around at night with my headphones on, which you're totally not supposed to do. But
Mm.
I feel fine. Like I don't feel like anything is going to happen. That was the biggest surprise too. I really thought I was going to have to be really cognizant of where I went and what I carried with me and things like that. But it was such a relief to know that in the United States, I feel like I do have to do that, even in nice cities, because they've just gotten overtaken by drugs and things like that. Out here, it's kind of a throwback. It's kind of like growing up in the 90s, when things were a lot better
It
and a lot
is.
safer.
It
Yeah,
is.
that
It's like a pre-drug era.
Yeah, and who wouldn't like to go back to that time? Where things were more wholesome and safe, and people had good intentions for the most part. You can have that, but you gotta stop talking yourself out of it and just go see. You can always go back. I think people don't understand that. I do this with investing too. I'm like, okay, you're not really spending money on things. You're just moving your money from one place to another. And if all these doomsday things I'm talking about don't happen, then you just move it right back over to your bank account. The risk isn't that big. It's a lot of the stuff's in your head. I'm telling you right now, because I had all these
Mhm.
fears too, and they were immediately squashed when I came out this way.
Did you have a burn the boats approach, or did you do like a test trip first?
I'm trying to think of where I went first. I think it was Mexico City. I think. Yeah, I went there before Panama. It wasn't a burn the boats thing because remember, my initial desire was Europe. I was just kind of going to Latin America because it was open. So I'm just like, okay, let's see what's here. And so you do a little bit of research to find out where the good neighborhoods are, and then you just go. Yeah, I'm not normally a timid person. I'm risk tolerant by nature. I'm a trader and investor, so I didn't mind stuff like that. But I still knew that I was going to have to worry about playing defense, in some of these areas. And, I would wander off Roma Norte, like right into Doctores, which they tell you never to go. I didn't even realize I was in a bad neighborhood. They were just functioning like everywhere else.
Mhm.
So it's like so many of those fears are overblown. I kind of wonder if they do it on purpose, because I think most people in the United States and Canada, they get news coming out of Mexico that usually originates from border towns. Now, don't go to a border town like an idiot. Fly over the border and keep going. It's a completely different Mexico than you think it is.
That's good. I think that's really reassuring to the audience, and I think you explained that better than I've managed to do in 100 episodes.
It's because I've had to explain it to a lot of people many times because again, most people are timid. They want to do it. Part of them wants to do it, but they just can't take that first step. And it's all fear. They don't want to admit it's fear because nobody wants to admit that, but it's totally what it is. So you just kind of have to break those barriers down for them.
Yeah, fear and the inertia of just being at home on the couch. I don't know. Mhm.
Yeah, but you're never going to know otherwise. I couldn't imagine being on my deathbed and saying, "Man, I could have gone to all these places, but I talked myself out of it." That would be worse than
It's
anything.
so true. Like it's so weird when meet people that are 70 years old, they're rich, they're American. I'm like, you've never been to the pyramids? You've never been to Japan? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm like, how? Like you could go and be back like 3 days from now.
Well, their food's all weird and jiggly fish, and they speak a weird language, and I wouldn't be able to understand them. It's silly things like that. You just got to learn by doing, and as I've said too, man, you know, I think rough times are ahead, and I think not taking risks is going to end up being the absolute riskiest thing you can do, and that's hard to explain to somebody. But I spend every podcast episode explaining just that to people in hopes that they'll get it.
You know what my new favorite thing is? I follow a couple Instagram channels with all the smash and grabs in California, and it's nuts. And it really just does nothing. Well, it's entertaining as hell, and it just confirms that we really made the right choice. That the U.S. does kind of keep getting worse, even in like we're in like a up market, and it's still just getting so much worse. My God, and like all the retail theft and stuff, it's nuts.
Yeah, and I think it's not the theft that makes people mad is the fact that they're just allowed to get away with it. I think that's really, really infuriating. It's like when some of the riots were going on too, are like, why is this allowed? Why are they telling the police to back off? There's got to be something sinister going on, but we're never going to really know what that is. So yeah, I'm with you on that. I will say though, you because of the foreign earned income exclusion, I'm allowed to go to the United States for 35 days out of the year. I go about
Uh-huh.
20 to 25 days, and every time I do, everything's pretty nice. Like I don't see a lot of these things that I see on Twitter, but just the fact that they are a thing and they weren't a thing before, it kind of tells us that things are trending in the wrong direction. And we were right. We saw, people like you and I saw the writing on the wall years ago when nobody would listen to us, and now they're starting to see it in real time. And it's just like, how much worse does it have to get before they move? And when they want to move, are all these avenues going to be closed? How easy is
Mhm.
it going to be to get Mexican
Well,
residency?
yeah, when there's a rush to it, how slow is that process going to be, So
Right.
can
My
imagine.
process was already slow because there's a bunch of Cuban refugees clogging up the line. You never know what's going to happen. Not to mention if you get a huge mass exodus of rich Americans and Canadians coming down too. I would not want to be stuck in that line. So yeah. So get up off your ass, spend the money, do it.
Honestly, I think it is getting like really real though. Something like the CVS stores getting robbed 10 times a day every single day, 32,000 smash and grabs in San Francisco per year. Like and then people are seeing this stuff on social media and they're seeing like, "Oh, I can just run out of the Gucci store with all this shit and no one's going to chase me." And now people are just getting more and more inspired to do it.
Yeah, I think that is state specific. I think most of what you see comes out of California and a little bit out of New York. Um, and they have always been pretty. I don't want to get political, but pretty liberal states with
Yeah. No,
liberal
yeah,
liberal
it's the
policies.
yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I
I'm
feel
not
you.
surprised I see it there. I don't think you see any smash and grabs coming out of Tennessee or Texas or anything like that. Um, if you do, I'm sure they they go after them. But yeah, so I try not to get too doomer about it, and that's how I keep reminding myself. Okay, for now at least, it's isolated in these certain areas, places I don't really want to go anyway. So just let's see what happens. But believe me, if you add on huge inflation and a recession to that, things like this are only going to get a lot worse. So,
Mhm.
yeah, super glad I did what I did. I have sovereignty now. I can go where I want. And it's just because I took that step and I wasn't afraid to spend a little bit of money and a little bit of red tape, deal with that. And now I'm covered. Now I feel like, especially once I get Paraguay, that I'll pretty much have complete autonomy as far as where I want to go. And if something sucks or something's dangerous near me, then I can just pick up and leave, and there won't be any restrictions. So that I mean, I know I keep beating this drum on this podcast, but I know there's people who listen to your podcast that want to come down and haven't yet. So this message is mostly for them.
Yeah, just look at VP, 5 years ago, he was entering his 40s, still, one passport, no residencies, living in the States, that kind of thing, in person income. And now he's got Mexico, Panama, Palau, Paraguay, 7 bank accounts, bullion bank, crypto. Like you're so much more anti-fragile and prepared than you were 5 years ago.
Yeah, and don't let my voice or the way I talk fool you. I'm not that bright. I make a ton of mistakes, like stupid mistakes that most people don't make. But you just got to be afraid to not look stupid and to just keep moving forward. And that's a quality I've always had. I take risks and I don't give up. So that was so yeah, you're right. God, when you put it in that perspective, yeah, in about 4 years, I've been able to get all that set up. Um, and just a little bit left to go, and then I'll be able to chill. Can't wait.
And have a lot of fun along the way.
Oh man, God, I almost feel like I'm working too much now, and I need to get out more. When the older you get, you really need to get out more. So yeah, if I can get these other projects up and running and kind of on cruise control by this time next year, it's going to be game on. Yeah.
Sweet. So don't want to take up any more of your time. I think the message is clear, guys. Just make it happen. Pull the trigger. You won't regret it. VP from No Nonsense Forex is the YouTube channel. Of course, it's going to be linked up in the show notes and the podcast links as well. VP, do you have a call to action, some final words from the audience, anything you'd like to share?
No, I mean, I think I've exhausted that. Yeah, I think there's two types of people listening to your podcast. Either people have already taken a lot of action and are just living the life and couldn't even imagine going back to their old life, and the people who are still sitting there, with these imaginary barriers in their way that they just need to find a way to break through. And there's only so much you can say, but I hope we've said it.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
That's right.
Cool. Well, this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today was VP from No Nonsense Forex. Thanks so much for doing this. And thank you to the audience for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.